Arise, minions, and welcome to unMadeGaming. We are here. We are back for another one of our monthly Q&A sessions, and we have a boatload of Qs this time. Primarily, all from one person. So we have 2 Qs from other people. So I'm going to hit those first, and then the rest are all from one person. So unless I pick up some here in chat, they're all going to be from those people. Also, I was just moving things around on my desk, and this is completely unrelated to anything. But look at this little guy. Look at this little guy. Those little eyeballs. It's a little black mage from Final Fantasy. Look at him. Look at him. Little cutie. Yeah, my girlfriend made that dude. She made him. Pretty fucking dope. Yeah, that's unrelated to anything. But ironically, to bring it back to being related to things, if I opened a store where you could buy little crochet tchotchkes and, I don't know, potion bottles with dice in them and other weird stuff, crocheted octopus and spiders and stuff, would you buy them? Because I'm thinking about doing it. Me and my partner are thinking about doing it. That's the Black Mage from 8-Bit Theater. Yes, G. Absolutely is. Hey everybody, thanks for showing up. Nutromancer, Draftier, thank you. Hello. Lightning, hello. Thanks for hanging out with us. All right, cool. Let's jump right in to our first question. This is a bit of an older question. I think this one we just missed it in the February chat. So this is from G. And she writes, one of my players told me they think their PC is stagnant and done growing. What are some tips for jumpstarting or rekindling a player's passion for their character? P.S. I personally don't think this PC is done. Just in chat, just so you know, G, you're the only person in Twitch chat. Everyone else is in YouTube chat. So yeah, one of my players told me they think their PC is stagnant and done growing. What are some tips for jumpstarting or rekindling a player's passion for their character? P.S. I personally don't think this character is done. Okay, cool. So, man, this is one of those, again, talk to your players kind of things. If your player has written you a backstory, which I highly encourage by use of the 10-minute backstory, go through their backstory, right? Ask them, are there any secrets that they know, secrets that they are about their character? Are there any missing plot pieces? Do they have a long-lost relative? Check for factions or groups that may have some sort of alignment to their character. There's always story for a character. And if there isn't story for that character, then that character needs to make some new story, right? So check the backstory, check with the character, ask them why they think the character's done growing. So we all get to that point in real life where you you hit probably your mid-30s, 40s, and you're like, this is who I am now. I'm done now. But you need to you need to be put into situations that challenge your perspective, right? So if they think this sort of way about the in-game universe, put something in their path that challenges that, right? If they think that all corporations are evil, or all corporations are good, put an opposite kind of thing in their way. If they think all criminals are bad, put a sympathetic one in there for some reason, right? So give them things that challenge their predetermined morals, right? Every character has some sort of moral code, whether the player acknowledges it or not. So give them something that challenges that makes them have to question their upbringing, right? Because either that will make the player's character question their own way of thinking and then possibly change and grow from that, or they don't, but it makes the other characters question theirs, and then they go, hey man, why did you kill that guy, right? And then it causes some sort of roleplay interpersonal conflict with that. So my first thing would be read through their background, read through their backstory, and find things that you haven't put into the story yet and put those in the story. Then I would talk to the player and figure out why they think they're done. And then I would give them reasons to not be done by putting things in their way that cause them to have to think and double check. G says, for what it's worth, I think my player means mechanically. They have all the mystic talents, etc., so mechanical growth they see as done. Oh, I mean, that could be. Yeah, so that could be true. So I know the character you're talking about. Well, I know the campaign you're talking about, and you're playing in Coriolis. And that can be true. Coriolis does kind of max out at a certain point where you have all the skills, so now the game becomes no longer challenging. Because you have so many skills. That's kind of why I put a cap on XP to make it last longer. It's enough that she talked about retiring the character, but there's a bunch of backstory we haven't explored yet. That is interesting. Okay, yeah, I would sit down and talk to that player, Yeah, that's interesting. So their mechanical character their mechanical character progression is done, but they still have more unexplored backstory. That is interesting. I would talk to the player if they're thinking about retiring that character. Perhaps there is, I don't know, an heir, a relative. Um, that sounds tropey and cop outish, and it is. Um, or perhaps just have a conversation about like, are you, why are you retiring, right? Do you think it's no longer fun to play this character because they have so many stats maxed out? Um, or are you just done with this character, right? Because if they're done with the character, then no amount of backstory is going to keep them in. But if they're playing for stats versus playing for story, that's also something very important for you to know about, and probably should have been discussed by them at session 0. But yeah, I would talk to them and find out why they think their character is done, like what done means for them and why they want to retire. Because perhaps they don't know that you want to do more story with them. Yeah. Cool. We have a quest. We have some questions. Hopping in with some questions from chat. Malcara Darkwell from the Twitch chat says 10-minute backstory. So the 10-minute backstory, I'm going to cover this super quick because I talk about it all the time. In fact, you can actually go to the unMadeGaming website. We have a blog that is the 10-minute backstory. But the 10-minute backstory is essentially an outline of a bunch of backstory chunks that focus it so that the GM has a thing to go for. So it starts with like 5 quirks about your character, and then it is something like 3 NPCs, 2 that are friendly, 1 that isn't. Then it has one that is list 2 secrets, 1 about your character that your character knows, 1 about your character that your character does not know, and then as the GM, I will create a 3rd secret that you don't know that is about your character. Another one is, let's see, we did quirks, NPCs, secrets. Another one is like, I think it's like descriptors or mannerisms, a number of those. And then the other one is goals. What is the short-term and long-term goal of the player and or character? But yeah, you can go into as much detail as you want with that. There is a full explanation of all of that over on the blog, over at unmadegaming.com/blog, probably. You can go find that over there, read the whole thing. As a tabletop actual play person, I typically give that out to all of my players. And at home, I also give that out to my players at home to fill that out about their characters, because it comes with pre-populated. It gives me NPCs to add to the world. It gives me secrets to add to the world. And it gives me a bunch of like juicy tidbits that I can bring from the players directly into the world and make the world feel like it's far more about them, even if you're running out of a module. Let's see here. We got another question in the chat from G. Perhaps this is a follow-up here. It says, question, how can you expand on abilities in a gaming system beyond what the book supplies? Okay, cool. I understood. So this is absolutely piggybacking off the previous question, with their player is mechanically capped out, as it were. So every gaming system has a formula, has a code. You have to crack the code or research on the internet for someone else who has already cracked the code, right? For D&D, ancestry or race or something like that usually looks like a +2 to something, a +1 to something, dark vision, or some sort of magical ability, right? And then an immunity or a resistance to something. That's kind of how you build a race quick and dirty, right? The DMG will teach you the formula on how to build a monster. But since you were asking about Coriolis, since we were talking about your character from Coriolis, I will stick to that. If you're looking at something like feats in any free league system, or really in any system, look at all of the other feats, see what they do, see what they cost, and you can kind of see if it costs 1 point of something, it does this. If it costs 2 points, it does exponentially more. And then you kind of break that down, and then you make your ability on that. Like, as a mystic in Coriolis, you can, see 5 minutes into the future something that possibly will happen, but it costs you 1 darkness point, right? And then you can be like, the further out you go, the more darkness points it costs. Or the more specific the thing is, the more darkness points it costs. Or the more likely it is to actually occur, like the more likely it is that possibility is the possible future, the more points it will incur, the more darkness points it will incur, right? But every game is formulaic in that sense, because that's just how you write a tabletop RPG, right? If all of the feats were just wildly all over the place, it would be very hard to say like, okay, this class or this build or whatever is equal to this build or whatever, right? So you're trying to have a level playing field of things, and sure, like obviously there's like min-maxers and like that kind of shit. But everything is formulaic so that they can sort of have something to balance against. So I would say whatever system you're looking at, take a look at what is already written, compare them, see what the differences are, and then sort of work your way off of that. And then play test it. Test it out, see how it works, and if it's too powerful, then talk to players. Usually when I make something for a game, I say, hey, look, guys, I made this. It may suck. It may be awesome. It may be overpowered. It may be underpowered. I reserve the right to change it in the future as long as you're okay with that. If you're not okay with that, we won't include it at all. So that's what I would do. Let's see. Yes, a very good point. We're relatively new for role playing. This is very story versus the stats. Cool. Hey, Paul, how you doing, buddy? Welcome to Ask a Lich. Hop in with some questions, my guy. Long time no see. Hope you're doing well. Love your face. Nutrimancer. I like systems where the stats don't massively go up, but even Blades lets you retire after a few levels. Yeah. So, Blades and freely gave so I guess Powered by the Apocalypse or Blades engine and Free League is similar. It's like X number of XP you can increase a stat or buy a talent, and after a while you have bought a lot of talents, and I think both Blades in the Dark and Free League games by default, the way that they give XP, it's like at the end of a session, ask these questions. Did you show up? Did you do this thing? Did you advance the plot? Did you fight a bad guy? Or like, it's like 5 or 6 different things that you can easily do every session. And if you do all of them, you have the 5 required points to increase something. So after like 10 or so sessions, chances are your stats are way higher than they need to be, in my opinion. That's why typically when I play those games, I give 1 XP per session. Open to tweaking, but that's typically what I do. Let's see. That's interesting. Thanks. Oh yeah, no problem. I'm glad that answered your question, G. We have another question here from Iquin that says, have you looked at the open beta for Daggerheart? And what are your thoughts on the system in that case? I've looked at the open beta for Daggerheart. I've looked at the open beta for Tales of the Valiant. I've looked at the stuff that I can see for MCDM's new game. Here's what I'll say. A lot of these new not D&D games came out when it was a possibility that D&D would be shutting down their SRD, right? So these games are not D&D. And they very much feel like that. They are using core mechanics of D&D with a little bit of spices added to it. I think the best one I've seen so far is probably Tales of the Valiant from Cobalt Press. I think if you like D&D, that's a great one to jump to if you don't want to actually play D&D anymore. Daggerheart, after skimming through it and not like reading super in depth because we ain't got that kind of time, it feels like Frankenstein's monster of D&D. It's basically D&D, but with like a bunch of cool mechanics from other systems sort of smashed into D&D. Do they work? Maybe. Does it read kind of clunky? Yes. Would I rather just play D&D? Also, yes. Yeah, so there's nothing in Daggerheart that I've read that makes me go, oh shit, this is going to replace Dungeons and Dragons for your typical fantasy game. But in the same respect, this is coming from me, who acknowledges that Cypher System is also basically just D&D with a few spices added, and it's also the same reason why I'll never run a fantasy setting in Cypher System. I'll just play D&D. There's not enough of a difference in that game for me to want to build an entire fantasy world when I can just play D&D, which everyone knows. So Daggerheart could be cool, especially if you don't already play D&D or don't already have people that know how to play D&D. Like if you have a bunch of new people and you're trying to get them interested in a new game, that could be cool. But I think there's a lot of hype around it for good reason, because there's a lot of like great names associated with that. And again, it is in beta, so like there is a lot of changes that can happen before it leaves beta, right? And the open beta just came out like a week ago, so who knows? Now that it has public, the ability to play publicly, it could change vastly. But what it feels like is you just kitchen sinked D&D. So in its current form, not for me. So yeah. Back to Coriolis. Regarding XP, I essentially give them 1 a session and give out all of it at the end of an arc. So they're getting 10-ish, which seems like a lot. I mean, I guess it depends on how long your arcs are. Usually I do a 12-ish episode arc, so they end up getting a little over 10. It comes out to 1 per episode, so that sounds right to me, depending on how long your arcs are. 1 a session, and you give all of it out at the end of an arc. Yeah, that seems fair to me. 2 2 skill point increases. Yeah. Nutrimancer, I mostly play Fate and usually get like 1 skill up out of 18 every 4 sessions. Yeah, that's kind of how I run Free League stuff. It's 1 skill up every 5 sessions, essentially. D&D would be better without all of the multi-classes. That's an opinion. I don't think I agree with you, but I can understand how you have arrived at that conclusion. There's something to be said about system bloat. There's something to be said about system bloat, and I understand like 3.3 and 3.5 had a huge problem with that, and so does Pathfinder, where it was like splat book after splat book after splat book, and there's like 75 subclasses. That it gets to be too much. And like if you look at all of the books that D&D has, plus all of the like almost official books that are written by like the GM's Guild people, I can see how the subclasses have sort of gotten towards the too much side. Yeah, I guess if you're at tables where the GM says you can play anything, then the subclasses are too much. I know that when I run D&D, I limit. I say, hey, you can use these 4 books. That's it. And if someone wants to play something outside of that book, I kind of will work with them depending on what I'm running. But I can see how you arrived at that conclusion. On the other hand, I have played so much of D&D that I am bored with all of the basic subclasses. So I usually play weird shit. So I can see kind of both sides of that. Both sides of that. Yeah, hell yeah. Lectu, welcome. All right, let's jump over to our list. Now, as a reminder, this list that I'm pulling from is a list from our patrons. They get to submit questions basically anytime, and they all get compiled onto a list, and I will read them out as we go through. All of these questions, unless I say otherwise, are all from Draftier. They are all from Melissa. Melissa went ham this morning, and wrote 75 questions. So that'll be fun. All right, let's see. Let us see. That question needs me to think about it more, so I'm going to give that one a little skipperoo for right now. Oh man, that's a good question too, and I also need to skip that one for now because I need to think about that one. That's crazy. We're 2 for 2 right now. Here's a great question that I don't have an answer to. Melissa says, how do you effectively manage time in a game, especially in a one-shot, to ensure that you have an engaging rhythm and or so you can finish the story on time? Boy, I wish I knew. If you go back and you watch any time that I GM and we end on time, I'm just as shocked as everyone else. Trust me, I want to end on time every time, but boy howdy, does that not happen. Goodness gracious, I wish I knew how to effectively manage time. Okay, so here's what I'll say. Effectively managing time in a tabletop game is very similar to effectively managing time in your regular everyday life. Time blocking, right? If you have X amount of time in there, you need to figure out what the formula is for that. So if I have 2 hours to run a game and I want to run 3 scenes, are all of these scenes going to be 45-ish minutes or whatever the time hack is there, right? No, probably not, right? Is one scene going to be shorter? Is one scene going to be longer? Is one scene just an introduction and then the other scene is like an hour long of roleplay? You need to take a look at what scenes you have planned or however you plan. I plan by scenes. However you plan your sessions out, and then consider your players at the table. Are they hardcore role players and you could just sit back and let them go for 45 hour and a half of just role-playing interpersonal stuff? Are they hardcore combat and they're going to analyze logistics and be in a 5-person melee for an hour, right? If you know that, then plan for that. So a lot of it has to do with reading the table. It's difficult to do in one-shots, especially when it's like people you don't often play with. So let's go for a table that you do play with. Is analyze your level of prep, what you're preparing for, and who your players are and how they play, and plan around that, right? If I know I need about 20 minutes for this, and hell, even when you're writing your prep, you can even say 20 minutes. And then as you're kind of watching time go by, you can sort of wrap up a scene. There are ways that you can segue into scenes without like just cutting your players off. There's peaceful transitions, etc. And then in combat, if a combat's taking too long, you can always just reduce the number of hit points that the enemies have. Or if they're intelligent enemies, they can run away. Or there's always ways that you can reduce the time that combat takes. Yeah, and then also talk to your players. This is probably my number one, is when I know that we have like a tight schedule and we have to end at a certain time because like someone has to leave or something. Usually I'll say, hey guys, look, we have a very tight episode, so no fucking around today. Let's crush this time, because my players want to roleplay, and they will roleplay forever if not stopped. which is a great problem to have. But usually, if I say like, "Hey guys, we have a tight schedule today," they'll focus their role play onto only the important parts, right? So that is for a table of people that you do know, a table of like regulars. Now for like a convention where you have a limited amount of time with objectively strangers, I would say in your prep, make note of things that are essential to the plot and things that are bonuses to the plot. For example, we can take Carnival of Screams, my Tales from Loop one-shot. Essential to the plot is going to the actual circus part, seeing the opening presentation from the ringmaster. What is not essential to the plot is something like the haunted house. In fact, in the module, I wrote, "This is not essential. You can cut this out entirely if you don't want it and if you want to focus them in here." So by having things you can just remove from the session based on the time that your players are moving through things helps. You just have to know that this is not essential, or if there is a piece that's in there that is essential but can be moved, go ahead and move it. I hope that answers your question. I hope that helps. Let's see here. Let's jump over to our chat real quick. If I'm thinking of a one-shot, I'm thinking of the third act starting by the second hour. That's fair. That's fair. G says, Mike's not allowed to end a session because I always get mad. I did tell my partner that if I don't end a session in which G yells at me or cries, then I did bad. I did a bad job. Nutrimentor says, I did manage to do a one-shot once in 4 acts or so, kind of sticking to a schedule for each act. In the end, they all ended differently, but at least I didn't go over the 4-ish hour mark. Yeah, that's fair. I'm fairly okay at keeping things in the 2 to 2.5 hour mark. I will say the one game that doesn't happen for is my paid GM game, Crystal Legacy. We often hit like the 3-hour mark on that game. Reading the table and knowing your game system, mini combats before the final combat. Mini combats before the final combat adds so much time. That is correct. Yep. Especially in systems like D&D and Cypher. That is true. True. I find that the act structure works okay-ish for time management. Yeah, I do acts or scenes. Same thing, basically. Critwitch! Hello. How are you? Perfect. Yeah, I hope that answers all those questions. Lectu says, question, gonna back Coriolis the Great Dark, which goes live tomorrow. Yes, I am. I will be backing that tomorrow, and then when my reviewer copy comes in, I'll probably skim through that and read through it, and then I'll wax poetic about wanting to start a new Coriolis game, and then languish in mental perpetuity forever about it. So, all right. Melissa says, do you think that actual plays have had an impact on TTRPG design, and why? Yes! Resounding yes! Easiest question to answer. Abso-fucking-lutely they have. Absolutely. And the reason they have is because I don't want to say the bar for entry was lowered, or the bar for I don't want to adjust the bar for entry, but a lot of tabletop creators and tabletop actual play people have had so much experience playing, and then also you have the added benefit of being a known name in some capacity. And then the low bar for self-publishing, like you can just make stuff on DriveThru, and you can make stuff on GM's Guild, and you can just do stuff, and it's so much easier to build a portfolio now than it used to be, so that a lot of the things that I learn from streaming or from creating actual plays goes directly into what I write, because when I write something, I am writing with the every player in mind, but I'm also writing with me and other streamers in mind. So it's sort of streamlined for that, right? And then there's a lot more mechanics, a lot more of fast-paced games that are not super duper mechanic heavy that are being developed. Kids on Bikes is one of them. You essentially have, I want to say, 6 stats, and all you do is you take like, okay, I want to be the best at this stat, so I'm going to take the D20 and put the D20 on that stat, so I have a chance of rolling higher. And then you basically stat down all your different stats from that. Super easy to make a character, super simple, quick, boom, into the action game, right? And the mechanics are super low. You want to roll strength, look at the dice to the left of your strength category, roll that dice. Boom, you rolled it. Great. Blades in the Dark, super fast game. A lot of the stuff with Free League Free League's 50-50. I feel like Mutant Year Zero, Twilight 2000, I feel like Walking Dead, they're going to be in the category of like they're a little bit mechanics heavy, but the rest of their games, especially like Tales from the Loop, they're super mechanics light, and you can sort of jump into the game and tell a wonderful story. And I think a lot of that is influenced by the current state of games, and then the current state of games is therefore influenced by live streams. We've heard it everywhere, the Matt Mercer effect, but you see all these people playing games that are action-packed, episodic, fast-paced, and that's what people are liking, and that's what people are searching for, so now people are going to start tailoring their TTRPG design towards that. That's why I think we see a lot more fast-paced, quick-to-the-action games in the past, 4 years than we have previously, which I think is very cool. Living those life goals. That takes a skill. I don't know what skill you're referring to, Crit Twitch. But yeah, that is a great question, and I think abso-friggin-lutely it does. It does apply back and forth. Melissa says, give us an update on your current plans for live plays or podcasts. Okay. Currently in the works, we have Alien, the 4th and final season of our Alien.verse campaign starting tomorrow. That's going to be a 6-episode run. People may die. That's all I'm going to say. We are continuing our Shattered Crown One Ring campaign. I currently have in the works a Vassin campaign that I need to follow up on. I do have a very interesting campaign that I can't talk about, slated for next year due to some scheduling stuff. Let's see. We have a new podcast that is unannounced in the works. We're still shopping around for a cast, and I'm still reading the setting and system. But I will tell you that it will be Dungeons and Dragons, and that it will be Ouroboros Coils of the Serpent. So if you know what that is, cool. If you don't, give it a Google. What else? What else do we have coming up? The community is trying to harass me into doing a space opera. Perhaps I will run Coriolis and do a space opera. Who knows? Perhaps. What else? I think that's all we have that's currently on the docket. Although I do think that I am in talks with Dot about Fallout. Nothing officially on the books yet, but we are in talks about Fallout. But in that respect, let me turn the question on you guys. What do you want to see? What do you want to see? What do you want to see on the screen, on the podcast, invading your eyeballs and your balls? Yeah, so that would be where we're at there. Also, several people, including my partner, are harassing me about running a Walking Dead campaign. So maybe that'll be on there. I'll be sad to say goodbye to Alien. I'll be sad to say goodbye to these characters. Possibly in a very in a very life-threatening way. Will be actual space opera with singing. That would be interesting. Very, very cool. I would consider an all musical episode. I don't think I could do an entire musical show unless it was like a 4-part series. I don't think I could do an entire. That's 2 hours of singing, and I don't know if you've ever been in a choral or musical production or an operatic. It's a lot. Singing for 2 hours is a lot. Avoid spin-off in Coriolis. Here's what I'll say. There is a Void spin-off that exists in the minds of one or more people. Whether that comes of anything, we'll see. We will see. Entire musical episode, you die. Ironically, the musical episodes of shows are usually my favorite ones because I am a dramatic musical boy. So, oh yeah, this is a good question. Melissa says, tell us about your current favorite media, video game, movie, TV show, book, etc., and what you think you may incorporate into one of your games in the future from that media. Oh, hold on. I got you. Let me pull up my phone because I take notes. I literally have notes in my phone for this. Let's see. Where the hell are they? Google Keep. Not sponsored, but hey, Google, what's up? How you doing? I have a note in here that is just a bunch of words. They're like titles. Oh, I know what they are. Never mind. Disregard. You didn't see any of that. Where the hell? I have so many notes for tabletop shit, so I just have to find it. Hold on. Let me log into my other account. Okay, here we go. Great. So this is from Final Fantasy VII. I'm currently playing through Rebirth, the second half of the remake. Industrial corporation grows in city, installs puppet government, security force becomes military, invades other resources for invades other regions for resource rights, installs military for peacekeeping. That's an idea. And then I have another one that says, dramatic bard villain, has audience for fight, sets stage with lights and sounds, has a monologue, thinks of it as a performance, and has a theatrical escape plan, vis-a-vis a trapdoor in the floor, a curtain falls, or a lights out / smoke bomb. Those are two notes that I have right at the top of my the top of my list of shit. Let me see. What else do I have in here for other notes? Where is my other TTRPG notes? Oh, this is from... oh, God, what's the name? Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities. I have a note here that says hallway / room lined with pages from religious text to help trap something within. There was a scene in that show where the guy like finds a secret door in the back of a storage unit and he's going down and it's all like brick walls, and all of a sudden the brick walls are all covered in pages of the Bible and the Torah and the Quran, and it just built this sense of foreboding. And then they all stop at a room, and in the room it's like protecting the room is trapping in some evil monstrosity or some shit. And then there was another scene in that with a corpse that a guy was looking at, and the corpse starts like moving and writhing like it's going to come to life, and the guy's panicking, and as he panics, rats come out of it. They were eating the corpse from the inside, and so he thought it was a zombie, but really just rats came out. So also startling that rats just coming out of a corpse is also pretty messed up. And then I am currently playing the game Unicorn Overlord, which is a strategy. It's a fantasy strategy RPG. And I had the idea, which I have not quite written down yet, that I want to start a fantasy game. I want to start a fantasy game, but I'm not sure how to do it. So I want to start a fantasy game that is based on the players are all part of a kingdom, and something happens where one of the generals turns, like he becomes the bad guy, and other officers in the military join him, and he usurps the throne, kills the king and queen, but the heir to the throne absconds with a number of vassals, right? So I want to have a very cool, like, Game of Thrones fire and brimstone opening, and then we cut to a montage of the last 10 years of training, and now the campaign starts with the heir and the vassals are all coming out of hiding to start a liberation movement to take back the world, right? So essentially, in the last X number of years, 10 years, 20 years, whatever it is, the world has gone to shit. Because this general who took over your kingdom then went on to spread and take over all the other kingdoms, and now he's like the emperor of the world, and rules with an iron fist, and all the other like bad guy generals have become like lords in their own right of various lands, and they all suck and they're all like oppressing people. But yeah, it's basically a liberation front kind of game. Yeah. So TV shows, movies. I don't read books because I'm illiterate. But TV shows, movies, and video games are basically where I take my plot points from, because I have ADD and I can watch TV and do something else at the same time and still absorb both of them. I cannot read and do anything else. I have to shut down completely to read. And if I listen to audiobook, I can do chores with audiobooks, but I can't focus on anything else that's like brain powered. I do listen to audiobooks, and I do have a couple notes from other books. I have been, a lot of my fantasy stuff has been informed by the amazing novels that are done by Richard Knack and Christy Golden and somebody else. They're the primary writers that do the novelizations of things like World of Warcraft and Diablo. So a lot of my fantasy stuff has been incorporated with that kind of shit. Let's see. Jump over to chat here. Get a book. Where are we? Okay, Mike, what do we want? Less things in the works, more stuff going live. Okay, all right. Okay. I want to run a bust-a-move music-based RPG for my friends, but the interest was low. That's funny. That's funny. You run bust-a-move and I'll play Parappa the Rappa. Slap. Chop. Punch. Kick. Where are you? Oh, these are the ideas in chat. I see. You can do a bunch of Scott Pilgrim-esque moves to mess with the opponents. Oh, in the game. I see. That's pretty funny. Draftier is an investigative reporter. Yes, that is accurate. That is accurate. That is accurate. G says, question, to build on that question, is there a specific favorite media you always return to for ideas? Like a favorite show, or like is it always TV or movies? Either way, the answer is no. Usually it is whatever I'm doing in the moment. I will see something cool and write it down, right? Like currently I am running a D&D campaign that is called Crystal Legacy, which is heavily based on the tropes of Final Fantasy. And as I was playing through Final Fantasy 16, I was writing down notes about cool things that I could incorporate in the world. As I'm playing through Final Fantasy 7, I'm also writing down notes. They actually released a pixel remaster of Final Fantasy 1 through 6, and as I was playing through 1, I'm writing down notes for that. So sometimes if there's a specific tone that I'm looking for, I will use that, or I'll look for inspiration from that. Like if I'm gonna run, I'm currently gearing up to run a space western, so I'm watching Firefly, and I have queued up Outlaw Star and Cowboy Bebop so I can take notes. So if there's something that I'm specifically running, there are media that I will look for and take notes on. But in general, it's whatever I'm, like these notes that were on my phone are just, I was watching something or I was doing something and I was like, this would be cool for something. They don't actually have a purpose yet. They're just a cool idea that I saw somewhere else. And I was like, I could do that in a tabletop game and that would be sick. Let's see. This is a good one. This is a good question. They've all been good questions. I don't know why I keep saying this is a good one, like they all haven't been. This is a heavy topic, this question. Melissa says, tell us your thoughts about character bleed. Emotions/events of the character bleeding into the player. Is it good? Is it bad? Do you experience it yourself? How do you manage it, if at all? Yeah, so if you've never heard of character bleed, it is essentially when you are getting so far into the mind and emotions and experiences of a character that after the session ends, you need time to get out of character, right? It's actually fairly common the deeper you get into role playing, which sounds a little pretentious, but it's accurate. The more you get emotionally invested in something, the harder it is to step out of that, right? I have experienced it. Usually for me, the way I manage it is talking it through with somebody else, right? So, for example, let's take Atari Twilight. Every session that I'm done, there are characters that there's no imagination behind the characters. They're essentially me, with a couple of quirks. Malik being one of them, Mitch being another one. So after those sessions where things happen, I experienced those things. I was here. I did those things. I don't tell them as like, Mitch did this. I say, we were doing this. I did this. So usually what I'll do is after those sessions, I would come upstairs and tell my partner the whole thing about what happened. And then that helps me recontextualize my experiences as a story. I realize that I didn't physically go do these things, that we're all playing pretend, right? Like I'm not like living in a fictitious world here. But it helps me recontextualize that. There's actually studies done about tabletop games, and the more people play them, I don't want to misquote this, so don't quote me. The way you make memories in tabletop games is the same way you make experiential memories in real life. If you think about when you talk about tabletop games, you rarely say, my character did this. You say, oh yeah, me and my friends, we were on a space junker and we were flying through. So you say it as if you were the first person there, right? I did these things, not a character that I played pretend as did. And your brain doesn't know the difference between those memories and actual physical memories that you did. It triggers the same things. So character bleed is fairly common. Is it good? Is it bad? Yes. It's good in the sense that you're fully, like, if you have that means you're fully invested in the character. And I think that's great. Like, putting yourself in those shoes lets you roleplay more, lets you be emotionally in the moment. It makes it far more real, right? Is it bad? Yeah, it can be. It can be if like another character does something to slight your character and you can't differentiate or separate those moments, and you are upset with that player for the actions of their character, even though that's not how the flow of things kind of worked here, right? If you can't separate fact from fiction or life from a role play, and you take it out on people, that can be bad. Or if it is actively negatively affecting your mental health. If something happens in the game and you are so invested that your quality of mental health or your quality of life has declined because of that, then that is also bad. However, talk to somebody, please. There's a number of places you can go to if you're experiencing that, even friends, but perhaps that is something that should be talked to with someone who understands, neural pathways and can therapize with you about that. And for me, like I said, how do I manage it? I talk through it. I reconceptualize it as a story that I'm telling somebody, and that takes me out of the moment. Rarely do I have bad character bleeds. Rarely do I have situations where a character bleed negatively impacts me. So that's great. So I don't have to manage it as much. Usually it's a high for me and not a low. I have other lows that are usually like, that was a terrible session. I suck as a GM. My players hate me. I have those moments every once in a while. Yeah. Yeah, cool. Very, very cool. Yeah, Atari Twilight is prime character bleed material. Yeah, for sure. For sure it is. Yeah, it also helps. So I don't actively say this, like outright. People who know. But the after show that we do is actually aftercare. By sitting and having a minute to like talk about the show and reconceptualize your stars and wishes about like, okay, so now I'm coming out of the character. What did I as the person, as the player, like about the show? It sort of gives you that 20-30 minutes to like get out of character and sort of, egress back into reality. That's essentially aftercare. It's essentially an RPG cooldown. Yeah. This is a weird segue. But if you, depending on who you talk to, there's a lot of crossover. Content warning. This is 18 plus conversation. The whole channel is 18 plus, but if you snuck in spicy adult activities, there is a term called aftercare. And it is in relation to intense scenes or interactions. You may need to have some sort of aftercare to like help you come down from the what is it, like the adrenaline rush, like the whatever the good hormones in your brain are. Right, to help you come back down, because what can happen is you can have all of those great time chemicals in your brain, and then your brain floods full of cortisol, and cortisol is like the we're gonna die chemical in your brain. It's the anxiety in your brain. So that roller coaster drop of emotions, of chemicals in your brain, can sort of make you feel bad. So you have aftercare in that case where, like, your partner reassures you that everything's okay and you're fine. The after show in our tabletop games acts as that, where we now discuss and reconceptualize this story as just that, a story. We talk about us as players versus us as characters. We kind of talk about our thoughts as the person controlling this puppet master of strings, what we were thinking through. And it helps you sort of segue into that. Anyone who has done aftercare or after shows or TTRPG cooldown versus games that don't have those, you can kind of feel that it can be harder to transition back into like, okay, now I turn the camera off and I fold up my book and now I have to go do the dishes. It can be hard to do. It can be hard to get back to that. Yeah, so that is the after shows are a safety tool. They are a safety tool as much as X and O cards, as much as lines and veils. Lines and veils help us not hit those things that could be triggering negative character bleeds. But the after show helps us kind of segue and talk through those. Yeah. Or like in your case, go to bed very hard. Yeah, it can be very hard to go to bed sometimes. I have that problem, but it's usually because like I'm so jazzed up because we just had such an awesome session that I'm like, oh my God, I want to play for 6 more hours. But yeah, it can be very hard. But yeah, that's the behind the scenes point of the after show. Sure, it's fun to do. It's fun to do Stars and Wishes. The wishes help me as a GM conduct things. It's cool for our patrons to see a look behind the scenes of what the players were thinking about their characters. But at the same time, it helps the players that are involved in it kind of cool down and come out of it. And there absolutely are after shows that have not been uploaded, because there are after shows that we had big discussions in, and we were like, man, this is more private than it is public, so we're gonna keep that offline. So we have that option as well, but we still have the after show to have that happen. G says we should add a give 3 things you are feeling right now to Atari Twilight after shows. Everyone would be sad and mad. It would be, I'm feeling sad and mad at the same time. I agree. That's not a bad idea. Not a bad idea. All right, cool. Well, we have, let me see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 questions left in the bank. But we are pulling up at the 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern time frame here, so that's where we're going to wrap this show. Any last questions in the chat that I can answer? If not, we'll throw them into our document over here. Here's your chance for last minute cues for me to A. Go. I'll wait. Take your time. Imagine if I say that and just fucking end the screen. Just turn the stream off. Savage. Oh, man. I would do that. I'm a monster person. Also, look how cute this guy is. Look at the little eyeballs. Look at the little eyeballs in there. Yeah, I gotta rotate towards the camera. It's the opposite mode. Now he's a detective. You think you met your quota for the day? Yeah, you're good. You've tapped out. You don't. No more questions from you, Melissa. We have, what did I say, 9 left for next month, and they're all. Is that Gandalf? Nutrimancer, get out. You're banned. G, ban him. It's not Gandalf. Whoa. It's a black mage from Final Fantasy. Gandalf. Jesus. It's a black mage, or Vivi from Final Fantasy. My girlfriend's learning to crochet, and she started making woobles or something like that. And then she ran out of ideas, and I said, make me this guy from this thing. And then she bought a $5 pattern and made it for me. And he's adorable. And it's his shirt is not, it's its own, like, she had to sew a whole shirt or and dress the little man. It's adorable. Like, his whole shirt is not attached. It's just on him. She had to put, like, clothes on him. It's freaking love bats. Orko's cousin, twice removed. Yeah, kind of. I could see how the inspiration from Orko could have come over there. I don't know if He-Man came out before the first Final Fantasy, but maybe. They were definitely both in the 80s. The first Final Fantasy came out for the Nintendo, and that came out in 1985. So I don't remember when He-Man started. Answer the Twitter question. What's your advice to GMs with players who only give you 1 or 2 sentences of backstory for their characters? Shake them. Shake them violently. Aris is asking this because routinely Gnome and KP barely give me anything for their characters. And so I have to work with them. Again, this is mostly I want to say this is mostly a silly question from Aris. But talk to your players. Say, hey, look, guys, here's why I would like you to fill out the 10-minute backstory. I've made the 10-minute backstory to be as simple as possible. You don't need to write a 2-page backstory. This is just a few short bullet points. I would like you to do this because I would like to incorporate your character in the world, and the more you tell me about your character beforehand, the better equipped I am to be able to incorporate the nuances of your character into the world and make the world more about you all collectively. I can do that in the moment, but it is far easier for me to do planning ahead of time. So if you could take a few minutes to knock that out, give it back to me, I can incorporate your character better in the world. Now, that being said, the players in question, I know them quite well, and I can reach out and be like, hey man, I need details about your character, right? Again, that is why I recommend the 10-minute backstory. Available over on our blog, unMadeGaming.com/blog. Go check it out because it boils down character backstory. It makes it less daunting, I find. Sitting down to write 2 pages is a lot of work. And also saying, hey, write a backstory. It can be anything. Is also, you have that white page paralysis, right? But this tells you, write me these 10 things. Great. Your job's done. I find that it makes it a lot easier for that. So yeah, break it down for your players and make sure that they understand why you're asking for a backstory, right? Like having a character backstory is a trope of tabletop games, but it has a purpose. Just like there is a trope of like, I'm not going to read your 10-page backstory. I mean, I'm going to read it eventually, but like if you could boil it down to these 10 bullet points, that'd be sick. Yeah, so that's what I would do. Talk to your players, check that out, be like, hey, this is why I want to do this. Help me help you. Cool. Yeah, elevator pitch. Exactly. Elevator pitch. The 10-minute backstory is essentially that. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is also a similar thing. Check that out. Yeah, that's it for this episode of Ask a Lich. We still have a few questions from this current foray of questions. Feel free to drop some questions in the comments on YouTube. Feel free to find any of our Ask a Lich posts on Twitter, Facebook, etc., TikTok, and comment on those. Or hell, any of our videos on TikTok. In fact, go to TikTok and just go watch all of our videos. Leave a comment. Leave a fart emoji. And then let us know what you think. But that's it. That's it from us. We will see you guys next time for more of these sweet, sweet cues. Thank you for all of them. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.